So Frank, do you want to, you're the, you know what's going on.
The sole surviving member?
Yes.
Well, just, I don't know if any of you want to say anything to introduce yourselves. I've been on a few committees in town myself, school committee, and I'm on the disability advisory committee, and been on some other things over the years. And the thing you sent me about that school town meeting, you know, well, I did look at some of it online, but I was there too.
I believe it. No, those are off. Those were a menu of them just for me, but also just to have, to search. I believe you were there.
And do you all know Tom now, or you?
Tom knows everybody.
Yeah.
I think
Tom
I
knows
know
all,
it.
yes.
I think I know everybody on the
Yeah.
call.
And then, maybe, while he's here, Roger being the long-term member of our committee, just wondered, Roger, if there's anything historically you'd like to share with us, some of the things that you tried to do, would do if you had the chance and were God again or whatever.
Yeah, I could talk for a while. You cut me off when it gets boring. Ed Rhodes actually got all this thing really cranked up about 15 years ago when he realized that town businesses were really constrained by the inability to expand because of water and sewer. And he put together an ad hoc committee that the Water Commission finally sort of took over. And we did a lot of work over the years, got a lot of studies done, got the town to put in a test well that looks very promising. I guess I would summarize all of that by saying that we were engineers trying to figure out how to do it, not how to sell it. And we never really put together everything you needed to make it a convincing pitch, because we didn't focus on exactly how it would get paid for and what sort of funds are available to make it happen, and how would that impact the town in terms of taxes for, supposedly the taxes on the businesses would go up and pay for part of it. So we never did a decent marketing job, in my view. We did learn a lot. It appears that there's water near downtown. We looked at Stepo Systems septic tank effluent pumps, if you're familiar with that term. Where
Stepo what's the?
STEP, I think that's the term. Step Systems, yeah. Where everybody has a septic tank and you just pump the liquid to a central processing facility, which not only makes the waste treatment thing much easier because you've gotten rid of all the solids. It's also much easier to install because you would use a 4-inch plastic pipe that you can run in people's backyards instead of down the street. And in the downtown, you might have 2 road crossings where you'd have to have these sewer pipes cross the street, but you wouldn't have to tear up the whole town. And the planning board did a good study during that period where they said, if you got rid of the septic, if you got rid of the septic systems and the wells, you could double the retail floor area downtown without changing any other regulations about parking and building heights and all that kind of stuff. So there's a huge potential in the town center if they had more flexibility about where they could put buildings and pavement and stuff like that. So there are a lot of pieces that were discovered that still useful if you wanted to work towards doing something about it. And I think the thing that the planning board did, they funded a preliminary test of the Jamison Fields downtown to see if that would be suitable for the water discharge after the treatment plant. And the results preliminarily look really good. The 15-foot holes were dug. There's no sign of water. It's practically a sand pit there, so it's really ideal for waste disposal. But in order to prove that on the scale we would like to use it, you would really have to do a very serious test, more geology, big test to load the place with a lot of water and make sure it goes away and you don't mess up other people's property and that kind of stuff. And that's, I don't know, these days it's probably something less than $100,000 to find out for sure if the Jamison field works. But so the pieces of the puzzle are there, but they don't all fit together. I think PFAS is going to force the town to do something. And Tom knows a lot more about this than I do, but practically every business in town has a public water supply. It gets tested every month, and they're all marginal, if not over sometimes, on PFAS concentrations. At the state level, almost all of them would flunk on the proposed federal rules. So we know there's going to have to be a big investment just for the businesses down. And I think the private wells are in a similar situation. They're not in such dire straits, but they are going to need assistance. So there's an opportunity there because there's probably going to be a lot of money from the federal government after Trump leaves office, maybe, to do something about it. So I think we have, you might say, we got 4 years to figure out what to do. So I guess I would suggest that you might want to really focus on the things we didn't do. How would you fund it? How would you sell it? Can you complete the economic analysis of what the benefit to the town would be and things like that? The thing I'm really encouraged about is the people that are now running the town are far more, shall I say, professional about what the needs of the town are in terms of infrastructure and things like that. If we go through Jeremy, for example, is essentially the senior town engineer, if you will. He has done these projects for several towns around us. He really knows the game well. He knows the politics with the state. Sean Colleen has obviously been doing a great job for the town on getting things done. And Heidi Doyle, the new planning board person, is really interested in this sort of thing and is and my experience with the finance committee is that they're very receptive to doing something if we had a convincing story. And then in terms of elected official, Eric Johnson, of course, is sort of the chief engineer of Framingham, and he's been involved in this quite a while and worked with the Water Commission quite a while. Jeff Waldron's quite sympathetic to this. Marion Nutra is,
who is in the room now.
yeah. Okay, I met her today at Knitting Outdoor Store. We talked about this.
Careful what you say, Roger.
Yeah. But when she was on the planning board and had that wonderful long-range plan done for the town, if you go back and read through that, there's water and sewer in there everywhere. It needs to be done. So And of course, we've got Tom Trainer, who has been all over this, along with dragging the planning and the groundwater protection committee along with him, is a great resource and this sort of thing. So I'm really encouraged by the people that are now running the town.
Very good.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments or?
Just for, I'm gonna try to take notes because I know minutes will have to be produced and no one's gonna want to do it, so I might as well just try. I don't know if anybody else is trying, I figure. But when you said maybe a decade ago, is that about right? When you said Ed Rose started talking about
No, this is 20 years ago, 2 decades ago.
Okay. So 20 years.
Actually, it's probably longer ago than that. I sent around, I think I sent around the copy of the report that ad hoc committee published, and that was probably 20, 30 years ago, something like that.
Well, one thing is that don't throw everything away that you have. So if you haven't come across things that you think might be useful, that you've already been around that block, then maybe we can avoid some pitfalls or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Meredith saw me throwing away most of my files at the dump a month ago.
I mean, I was feeling for you maybe more than you were, because I know my dad has the same stuff in his garage.
Yeah. Well, I got a 60-year career of stuff.
I mean, as you look back, some of the things that Tom Trainer sent us earlier about the law that was passed back in 1915 and then 14, 15, and 16 to set up a water district in Sherborn. It's amazing that, here we think we're going to invent the wheel, and the wheel's been there, but it's just sort of been on hold all this time, so to speak. But it's amazing the things. Then you wonder at the time whether it was World War I that really put things to a stop back then, because about the time that I didn't see the next step, but they needed the steel and they needed the young men somewhere else to who be doing some of that work. So it was put on hold, obviously.
I think there was another close call about 1930 too, where they had
1923 or somewhere
somewhere in there where there was a definitive proposal made to the town with maps and all that kind of
That
stuff.
was in 38, 39.
38,
39.
The next batch of scanned documents I'll send you
Okay.
are from the late 30s.
And then we had another war, right? I mean,
But also, I don't think it was clear that public water supplies were cleaner. I mean, now that with the technology, they can be made to be cleaner. But I think back then it was sometimes hit or miss with how clean the water was.
Yeah, one thing that does concern me, it would really be nice to know what our bedrock well water capacity really is in this town, but that's probably impossible to figure out. It's probably somewhat local, depending upon cracks and whatnot. And we know the towns around us are stealing our water anyway, so from their wells.
So Roger, and this could be to the broader group because you guys have a lot more experience with the town, but it sounds like a water district and sewer discharge would facilitate growth in the town center. But do you think that the residents of the town, what have an appetite for growth in the town center? I know some people that I interact with like things the way they are, but some want to see some new businesses in town. But what's your sense, your finger on the pulse of the town overall? Just, would you say a majority of people would like to see more growth in the town?
Well, there've been several surveys taken over the past 15 years or so that say it'd be okay. Most people say it'd be okay to, develop the town center and all that sort of thing, as long as they don't have to pay for it.
Mm.
If you give them a choice, do you want this? Do you want to pay for it? They won't pay for it. That's
Mhm.
kind of a rough answer, but as I said, I think a case can be made to at least long-term show that that would be good for the town, tax-wise, business-wise, real estate value-wise, that sort of thing. But, you know, it would take a lot more effort than we could put into it.
I think a
Nope.
lot of people would be for it, but then there are some people who say if you had widespread water and sewer, then it would break our 3-acre zoning and it would change the tone of the town and so forth, and would change it completely. And so that's why I think that this time they went for a selective area to have this
Yeah.
water
Yeah, well, you
district.
can still do that. I meant to mention that water and sewer district on Coolidge Street is a great step forward. I don't know, the town voted, what, 92% for that whole project. And it just established a water district with very defined boundaries, and they worked out all the legal constraints to make sure that happened. So that's a hurdle that we didn't tackle when we were trying to sell it before. Now we have the evidence to say, yes, this is possible, and it'd be nice if it happens out there, of course.
Right. And if you read that law, it's almost like a town in itself, a whole governmental entity,
Yeah.
you know, with all sorts of powers that it has
Yeah,
for charging and borrowing and doing all sorts of things, almost like a town.
yeah.
Uh,
But while you're saying that, recognize that that's not cheap to
no,
operate a sewer system or a water system. So you need a big enough base to pay for that somehow. So
Could I say something here? I don't know who's the chair right now, but
well, go ahead.
this is Marion. Here, let me just appear magically on your screen. There we go.
Mhm.
I don't know if you already said this, Roger. I came in a little late, but the water district legislation was just approved by the Mass Senate
Yeah.
this morning. Oh, he said that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing that needs to happen, besides a lot of other things, to actually put the water pipes in and sewer pipes in the ground, but something to be thinking about for this group is the final 5 commissioners. One is going to, 2 will be appointed by the select board. 1 will be appointed by you, the water commissioners.
Yep.
The interim water commission that could be set up anytime as soon as we actually have a legal water district would be all just appointed by the select board. And that's just an interim preliminary group that will help set up the business and do things that have to be done before the pipes actually go in the ground. So just I'm not asking anything of you tonight, but just to think about who you might want to have as a water commissioner. And then when the select board goes to appoint the first 5 interim commissioners, I think it would really be good to have representation there as well from among the water commission. So
It's coming.
okay.
Yeah.
Mary,
Okay.
and when do you see that the select board setting that up? Assuming the governor signs things soon.
As soon as the governor should sign it really soon. But we should have 5 people kind of ready to go. Because we really, we don't know how fast the negotiations are going to conclude with Framingham. They're on track. They're looking good, but, you know, we don't have that in place yet, nor with Natick. But I think it would be good to have 5 people lined up because there will be you know, it'll be a tricky choice. There's a lot on the shoulders of the Water Commission.
Hmm.
As you said, it's a separate legal entity from the town. And of course, they will hire managers and they won't be doing the day-to-day work themselves, but the oversight will be a big job, at least, especially in the beginning, because
Yeah.
it's a learning curve. So I have put out feelers to the select board the last week or so, and then again today to Jeremy and to the chair to just alert them to the fact that we have to get that on the agenda and start thinking seriously about it.
Okay, thank you.
So, Marion, just to clarify, so when I read the bill, it sounded that the district forms as soon as Governor Healy signs it. But since we don't have a representative from the rental housing project, because it doesn't exist yet, or a representative from the senior housing project, since that doesn't exist yet, are you saying the select board is going to appoint all 5 members just for the time being for that district?
Yeah, interim for an interim commission, the select board will appoint all 5, and that's actually written into the legislation.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's there.
Okay.
It's yeah, right after it talks about how many appointees who has on the definitive commission. There's a sentence that says an interim board will be appointed by the select board. And the only requirement there is they be residents of the town. That's the only requirement in the legislation. But in fact, we would want people that, you know, will want to be getting people up to speed to actually do this definitively. So if you have ideas, there will be plenty of room for input.
Understood. Thanks, Marion.
Mhm.
Okay, if there's on our agenda there, if we have any other history, we can bring it up as we go along, but
Tara
Um,
also came in recently. I don't know if she would like, I'm sorry, I don't want to put you on the
no,
spot, but if you have anything to add, Tara.
oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, hopefully, you can hear me okay. My son, I just texted him to put the Wi-Fi booster in the room next door.
Hey,
So yeah, I'm sorry I joined late. I did miss some of what was said, of course. I know one of my struggles with Water Commission was that we had no real, I guess, direction because we don't have our own funding and we don't have we didn't have like any enforcement responsibility. So it sounds like with the North Sherborn Water District that there will certainly be like a task for the commission, which will be great.
Hmm.
Or at least for a commissioner.
and if you don't already know, this is Tara's business. You design water systems, right, for towns and so forth?
I do, yes, all drinking water.
Right.
Yep.
Anything else you want to share or things you saw that when you were with us that you'd like to see us go as far as the direction or anything?
I mean, other things we certainly discussed, the water downtown or the waste or the sewer downtown. We discussed the Morse as well. We discussed other possible locations for a well, but again, we had no clear direction from the town, like if they wanted to pursue anything. So it was like, well, we could study this. We could look at that, but because the Groundwater Protection Committee certainly does a lot as well. So it was kind of waiting for us to be told to do something almost.
Yeah, I don't know if it's clear to the newer members that the Water Commission has 0 authority and they have no budget. So anything that costs money or has any significant impact has to be voted on by the town. And 2 or 3 times we did get some money from the town to do what we thought could be done.
Right, you helped organize to get that test well, and that cost some
Yeah.
money, and then to
Yeah.
get it tested afterwards. So we did get that.
Yeah. And engineering studies that I've sent copies of those around. Well, speaking of that, the guy that did all the engineering work for us, Peter Newton of Bristol Engineering Advisors, is a
Peter, what's the last name again?
Newton,
Newton. Okay.
NEWTON,
Okay.
Bristol Engineering Advisors. He is now the chairman of the commercial engineering people in water systems. He's now the chair of the PFAS committee for Massachusetts water engineers. So he's a potential resource. And as I said, he did a lot of the studies for the town on water and sewer.
Right.
And the current representative to the Commonwealth, James, what's his name?
Arena DeRosa.
Yeah, he's a real fireball.
What's
And
the
he-
last name again? I'm sorry.
It's Arena DeRosa. It's a
Oh, okay. Oh,
a
all right.
compound name.
Yeah.
Arena.
Yeah, and
DeRosa.
it's on the legislation. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
And what were you saying about James Arena DeRosa? Sorry.
but he will be a really good resource, and he's a doer, and he understands our problem. And I think the select board works pretty well with him.
Yeah, I think he'd be the conduit in case we were looking for any grants or anything like that. He could steer
Yeah.
us in,
Yeah,
or his staff could steer us in the right direction on that.
right.
Okay. Maybe now we could talk a bit about the organization of our committee. We need to elect a chair. And then we need to also think about a member to be on the groundwater protection committee. Those two things. And I don't know if we want to make an official minute taker or whether how we want to handle that. But both of my fellow members now have a lot of experience in science and wastewater and water systems and so forth. So are either one of you interested in being the chair? I hear crickets.
Yeah, Frank, I would say I would yield that to you or Meredith. In my mind, I kind of thought maybe you were going to do it, Frank, as kind of the senior member and all the experience. But yeah, I'd happy to be minutes doing notes after this one, Meredith. But I don't think I'm quite ready to be the chair.
Well, Frank, here is what I would like to propose to you. Is that we maybe for the short term continue under your guidance as chair and maybe rethink of organization in 2 months. Once we even know how things work.
Okay, that would seem reasonable.
Yeah.
If you want to do it that way. But we probably should, though, think seriously about perhaps one of you two being the member on the groundwater protection committee, though. So I don't know if you want to talk about it or whether you.
I think Meredith is already hooked into that game, aren't you?
I've come to learn a lot about septic systems of late. So I wouldn't mind at all. But Tom, is aware that my time is less than it used to be, so there won't be any more 30-page
Oh, it was wonderful. Thank you.
applications.
Well, let me just state that whoever steps up, and I hope you can have an official vote and an appointee to the Groundwater Committee. We would be delighted to have any one of the three of you, but please know you have very big shoes to fill from Tara's 2 years with the committee. So thank you, Tara, for your time on our
Yeah.
committee.
Thank you.
That's not true, but yes.
It is true.
You managed to get a whole water district installed in this town, right?
It happened on your watch, right?
Yeah, you were there.
Okay, well then, uh, what's your feeling on this, Taylor, as far as being on the Groundwater Protection Committee?
You know, I mean, I'd be happy to do it. I think my first thought is just bandwidth concerns to start off. You know, being on joining a additional committee and participating in that. I think I'd like to kind of get a grasp on this committee over the next few months, and then once I really feel like I have a strong hold on it, then volunteer for more. But to start out, I think I kind of just want to focus on this one and really wrap my hands around kind of all the content you've already sent us and get a really strong feeling about where we're trying to go and what the goals are for this committee and where I can contribute there before I overextend. You know, I don't want to overextend and then underperform. So I think I'll hold back for now on
Okay.
offering to join that.
Okay, so at this point in time, so we can have representation, Meredith, I
That's fine.
nominate you to be on that committee.
Vote away.
Do I hear a
Somebody-
second?
Yeah, somebody needs to
I
second.
second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, well, we have a member.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Uh,
Meredith.
Congratulations. Frank, can you send a short email to Jackie Morris, the clerk?
Yes. All right, and maybe someone could make a motion that I would be the interim chairman to be decided later too then.
I will make a
I
motion
motion for
Oh, go for it,
Frank
Taylor.
has to be the interim chairman.
for what is the term of interim that you would like, Frank? Before we
Oh.
visit.
Let's say 2 months.
Is that okay with you, Taylor, on your motion?
And I amend my motion to include 2 months.
Okay.
All
Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
I
Aye.
Okay, all right. So that's done for the moment.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah. So looking forward is I met with Tom and Bart there on the possible water use restrictions. And I think that you both got copies of Dover's law. So
yeah.
maybe we could all sort of go through it, mark it up, and change the things that would be more pertinent to Sherborn. And yes.
I would
No.
like to comment on the overall idea and try to separate the good intent and what I believe might be additional information to consider that might make it a moot point. So if I could have the floor for a moment.
Sure.
Not, I understand, having come from St. Natick most recently there, with water coming from a reservoir, it's pretty obvious that, water that comes down, precipitation directly fills a reservoir that then gets, used, and they have very good reason to restrict water use during droughts. My question earlier today was, well, if you're dependent on groundwater, obviously there would be an impact on the groundwater level due to drought, but what is the cycle related to that? So I looked, I still have access to a university library, which is very helpful. And I looked up papers related to impact of droughts on groundwater levels. There is a sizable delay in the best paper I could find, a delay of 20 months between the onset or the duration of the drought and the actual impact on the water levels. And in addition, if anybody who's familiar with septic systems knows that you do not want your ground underneath that septic system to go dry, because there could be compaction of the soil and then backing up ultimately of the septic system. So because of the delay in the actual impact on groundwater level and the not wanting the septic field itself to go dry, I would suggest that we just recommend to people in the town to always use water wisely. And in the event of a serious drought, water their septic field. And I don't know if anybody disagrees with that, but then that is counter to, because of the septic fields, it is counter to what one would understandably believe would be the best practices during a drought. Tom, what do you think about that? Because you would know more than me, or at least as much.
There's some good papers out of UMass Amherst talking about drop in groundwater levels, and some of the early studies suggest that given the frequency of droughts that we're getting now, that there might be, and it's research, right in the middle of long-term studies like anything affected by climate change, might suggest that our groundwater levels are dropping over the last decades. And
yes, I would believe that.
And as most of you know, most of our wells in town are fairly deep, so hopefully residents won't be impacted. But on the groundwater protection committee, we're just starting to talk about this, and I see us talking about it for several months too.
Yeah.
And researching it and learning more. But I personally am attracted by the Dover bylaw. It's very simple. When the state declares a level 3 critical drought, that outdoor, non-essential outdoor water use be eliminated, and that's definitely the case, as you mentioned, in towns with limited public water supplies from a reservoir. They're forced to do that for conservation. But I'm looking forward to studying it next several months.
And does anybody else have?
Well, I know that we had the last drought, was it 21, 22? Is that
there's been droughts in 2022 and now 24.
Right. And so during that last set of droughts, there were some people who went temporarily dry, and they had to really curtail their water use to keep it up a level they could pump. And some people had to drill more wells. And the thing is, most of the time, there's not much you can do about it, but you'd hate to see some people have these automatic lawn watering systems that run like all night long. And so it seems like there might be some period of time where you wouldn't want that to happen during a severe drought. And the thing is that you don't want to be looking to see what fire truck you want to buy when your house is on fire. It'd be nice to order when things are nice and calm and you can think about it. So the thing is, this wouldn't be put in place unless the selectmen, and they're, liable to political pressure, decide to call it an emergency, and then you would have a curtailment. And I'm not sure how often Dover has put any curtailment in place. But it'd probably be mostly a short-lived thing, but it might not be something good for long term, but I don't think it hurts for us to look at it and maybe see how it could be worded.
If as a helper to the groundwater protection committee, there is going to be an just based on how septic systems work, there is the need to keep that field moist enough, even in the event of a drought. So just based on
I'm confused about you're worried about a septic system drying out when, if there's 3 people living in the house, flushing, taking showers, the leach beds are constantly having water introduced to the leach field.
But the full, my understanding at this point, and I could be wrong, is that you really want a certain level of wetness of not only what's going out, but the water really kind of surrounding it on all, well, mainly.
you don't want water right underneath it.
No, but you want it moist enough, for the microbes to be there. But also, we all know that when the ground gets too dry, that is when you get the worst runoff, because there isn't even the ability to kind of start to permeate. You have to have a slightly or more wet, not sopping, but more wet soil for even absorption of water into the soil. And that's true also for the layer around the septic field. So I mean, I was looking up the delay between the onset of the drought and when the groundwater level starts to really dip. And I did find a paper from the most recent one. The best one I've found was 2021. But also, and I know this from previous looking up of things, that you do want the septic field itself, to the best of your ability, to be sort of in a sort of a normal level of moistness, for there not to be compaction of soil and backups as a result. And I just, it seemed like the science would suggest just always being good with water and making sure that your septic field is in sort of its sort of standard state of moistness, even in a drought.
There are regulations in the town septic systems where you have to have some minimum permeability to keep so the septic system doesn't drain completely. So if you want to build a septic system somewhere around Farm Pond, you got to put in all kinds of stuff to keep it from turning into a gravel pit. So
so it doesn't run right through and into the pond, you mean?
yeah. Well, not into the pond so much, but it dries out the septic system.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe that's something we can look at in future meetings, and we can all do our own individual study on the subject and come back with it next time around.
And I can do another brief literature search, and I can send out what I can in terms of the papers that I find. If obviously do your own. If you find any and you want me to try to access it, you don't have free access to a university library, just let me know, and I could try to dig them up too.
That'd be great.
I'll send you some, Meredith.
Okay.
Because I also have full access to.
Good. You might have access that I don't. Maybe between the both of us, we can.
Yeah.
Tom, the study that was done for groundwater protection on wells in town, how far back in history do they have data on new wells?
Public or private?
Private. Well, either one, but private would be better.
Well, the story isn't good on private.
I know this.
The town records, they really didn't get serious about Title V until the late 70s, early 80s,
Yeah.
and then it was really stiffened in
But
95. And most of the data we have on wells comes from septic work. Because they just didn't record things. So with the Groundwater Protection Committee's mapping project, which is almost done, we're almost up to like 1,600 properties mapped. We have locations for wells for 35–40% of them. But in terms of other physical attributes like depth to bedrock or total well depth to groundwater, we might have 15 or 20% of the wells.
what I had been interested in is the number of wells that get put in every year versus drought. Can you see any?
It's a small number. It's as I think Frank mentioned some time ago. The big drought in 2022, I remember hearing from the Board of Health, 3, 4, 5 wells were affected out of
3% of the
out
population.
of 1,500. So
Yeah.
it's a small
Yeah.
small number. And on water quality, we virtually have very little
Right.
water quality on our private wells because we're one of the few towns on private wells that doesn't require water quality testing at time of house sale.
Yeah.
Dover requires that, Concord, Carlisle require that. Most towns, like a Title V requires a septic inspection report at time of house sale, and that's not required in Sherborn for a private well water quality. So, and then on the public wells, it's interesting. Except for some of the records in town hall that do have location and depth and physical attributes like that, I call the DEP and they won't give me information on the on say the depth of a public well. They said it's they can't give that out to the general public. Switching the water quality of the public wells, that's probably the best story. The public wells are required by the DEP to be tested for certain water quality parameters, although the frequency is not as often as you might think. Roger, you mentioned a while ago monthly. The only well that's tested monthly that I'm aware of is the town campus well, because of the PFAS problems, and the wells serving Woodhaven and the apartments and houses there. But the other we have 14 public wells in town. The majority of them, that are serving, say, a market or a restaurant, they might be tested quarterly for nitrates, and they were tested once for PFAS.
Yep.
And the state hasn't required any more PFAS testing. So we have some data, but we don't have a lot of data.
Yep.
Tom, do you have the map of the downtown that shows the overlapping of the septic systems and the wells, the ones that are less than, say, 125 feet like they're supposed to be?
I always have a map ready. You want to look at a map? Let me see. All right, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
As a presentation I gave the Board of Health a couple weeks ago. So you want a map. Find a map.
I know there was one with some nice pink circles on it there somewhere at one
Yeah,
time.
that's one of them, but I was trying to think if there's a better. Well, we'll have to go with that one. So if, in fact, let me make it larger. Can you see that?
Yeah.
I can make mine a little bigger. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can go to another one, but right, this shows the downtown area. This is Pine Hill School right here.
Yeah.
And then this is the Fireside, and then Frosty's, and the other, the town campus well is, so all of them have, you know, the wider pink is the IWPA, the interim wellhead protection area. All of them have, you know, multiple septics and cesspools in that area. Do you see this large green area
Right.
on the right? That's interesting. That is the
Zone 2.
zone 2 for the housing that's in this area, and actually very close to where Taylor lives. That's the zone 2. Zone 2s are very interesting, and Tara can probably explain it better than me, but they get a hydrogeologist to define a zone 2. It's not just a simple radius like a zone 1 or a IWPA is. So they look at the pump rate and the hydrogeology of the surrounding land, and they calculate, you know, very complex zone 2. So the zone 2 actually it sort of ends right along the street, but it's well within many septic and cesspools. We have about 75 active cesspools still in town. Does that answer your question?
Well, I think so. Just so we have a picture that basically none of those places could be built today down there with
None of them would be approved today.
no. And so that's why I think that there was the interest, you know, that Roger was talking about to fix that area. Even if you didn't expand the commercial area, you could make it a lot safer than it is right now, probably. If we either did the water or the sewage, if we didn't do both, you know.
I think short term, everybody down there is going to get a PFAS treatment system.
Yeah.
You know, many residents in town have done that. I don't, maybe some of the businesses have done it, you know, I wouldn't know whether they did or not, because they're not being tested anymore. At least not by the DEP. So the town, as you're probably aware, is right in the middle of a design study with an engineering firm to treat for PFAS the town campus well that serves the town hall, the community center, the police station, and the library, our nice new library, and the wells at Leland and the housing complexes, and the Pine Hill well, which is just under the 4 part per trillion new EPA limit. And finally, the Firehouse number 1 well, which is 60, 70 parts per trillion, very high. So those, they're studying and they're going, I think the plan is to go to the next town meeting in the spring and ask for, you know, whatever the design calls for. I'm assuming it's going to be several $100,000 to put in treatment systems at all those town-owned public wells.
Okay, all right. Well, if we could look now, possibly next on our agenda, it says work on our goals. So if anyone has any goals they want to throw out there for us to think about, or we could make an assignment for ourselves to pick out some goals perhaps for our next meeting. Does anyone have any, knowing what you know now, are there any preliminary goals you might want to have us consider?
Roger has his hands.
Yeah. You're gonna have to assign somebody to the Coolidge Water District pretty soon, so I don't know, maybe have everybody reread the legislation and come back to the next meeting, figure out how you're gonna assign somebody to that.
Right, and so we could assign one of our own members, or we could suggest someone who's out there, who has the skills. So yeah, we should think about that.
Are you sure of that? Marion's left.
Yeah, she left.
But Tara, I wonder if I was on that working group, Tara was on it. My assumption, and maybe I just didn't follow the lawyer writing things well enough, but I thought the intention was to have one of the water commissioners as the appointee, but maybe you're right, Frank. I don't know.
Well, I know that
Tom,
we choose
that's
one,
my
but I don't know
understanding.
if it has to be one of our own. It could be.
Yeah, what I'm suggesting is I thought it had to be one of your own. Tara, do you remember?
Yeah, my understanding is the same as yours, Tom.
That it had to be one of them, you mean?
Yeah.
But
Okay.
Maybe that's an excellent question for you to ask Marion Neutra or Jeff
One thing to
Waldron.
point out, though, is that Marion, when she came on, said that in this interim period, the select board appoints all 5.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a water
Ah.
commissioner.
Right.
So I think
Good.
they would like one of us to do it, but I think
Until
if
that
we,
time.
yeah, for the interim period. And yeah, I think that would be their preference, to appoint one of us to do it, but as one of those 5.
Right. And I think they want
I
our
don't think it's
input
a plus.
anyway,
Right.
Okay, so that's one thing we have to think about too, as far as our own work skills and work time that we have and skill sets and so forth. And then, some of you might know some people who are in the business that would also be a good interim person, because they have to pick 5 of them. So, we can suggest one, but I'm sure that if you had some ideas, they wouldn't mind if we suggested 2 or 3 for them to consider.
I think a goal could be understanding what is expected in this interim period of those 5 people. I think that would be nice to know. And in the select board, if they're planning to appoint people, will need to explain what those 5 people are supposed to do in this interim period. So that could be one of our goals, is trying to understand better, maybe starting with Mary and asking her, like, what happens in this interim period? What are the expectations of the people appointed?
Because I think the demands on the interim people and the first regular appointed commissioners is going to be considerable. You're setting up this whole, thing with all these people who have to be doing different jobs and making decisions. So I think it could be pretty intense.
Gonna be looking for contractors and things like that.
Yeah. Okay, so talking about working on our goals, so that can be one of our goals, is to think about that and find out more information. When you talk about goals, is there any items that people particularly want to see on the next agenda that we have?
Do we have any information kind of on cost benefit analysis type thing, just of and this goes back to Roger saying, like, we did good sort of engineering research on this concept, but less on selling it and what are the benefits of it. and maybe you underplayed that, Roger. Do you have any details of like what of anything that had been looked into over the past 10, 20 years as to what benefits the broader town would feel from implementing public sewer and public water in the town center?
I could probably say better what we don't know. The planning board did quite a bit of work and said, gee, we could double the commercial floor area. And then we asked, well, what would that do to their tax rates? And they said, well, we can't answer that question. And we went to the assessors and said, how would you assess that? And said, well, we can only assess it once it's done. It's because we don't know what they're going to do, you know. So that was a dead end. But they're probably experts in the state somewhere that do long range planning for towns that can put together a financial picture of what the town would benefit from. I don't know who that person would be, but must be somebody.
One thing as far as the goals, I think previously the commission was mainly thinking about the downtown area, the
Yeah.
water and the sewer. And now we have the North Sherborn Water District. So now we really have to think about two different directions. We have to, you know, support the one that's the law is about to be passed and be ready to have people move forward on that. And then also take a look at the downtown area at the same time. So we're sort of divided, I think, as far as our focus is concerned now. So
Let me note that for people new to this, when we say downtown, we sort of collectively, we include the town offices and the public housing and
The churches.
churches and things like that. So the septic load north of the tracks is the same as the septic load south of the track in this imaginary area you're looking at. So it's
right, and so it's that rather narrow corridor there that we're talking about. And of course, once you start, then some people say, what about this one? What about that one? I mean, we found that out like with Meadowbrook Road, you know, if you're going by, then why not include them, or why not include the other people that
right.
you go by as on your way from Sunshine Dairy down to the site. So, and that's where I think people wanted to have a definite area which would take a vote of the town to change, so that it wasn't just an open-ended water and sewer district.
Yeah.
All right, well, so
Maybe a goal would be to work with the planning board, Heidi in particular, about how would she go about assessing the financial viability of the town center. What would water and sewer do there?
And-
You may have people that know more about it.
And can I add on top of that excellent suggestion by Roger? Some of you may know, but maybe not everybody, that Jeremy was successful in the last year, and the monies are now in the town coffers of getting a $900,000 town center, mainly traffic study, but there's going to be a whole bunch of study of the downtown area, particular, you know, vehicle and pedestrian issues, biking, trails connecting to town center, the recreation fields. But Heidi's already mentioned to me they're interested in, you know, any utility, you know, maybe burying the electrical lines downtown, but also looking at water and sewer. And, you know, why dig up the road 4 times?
Right.
If you have plans, so that's an excellent suggestion, Roger.
Yeah.
You might want to invite Heidi to your next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, she came to me, I guess, most others, and said, "Hey, we're gonna be studying the streets. Where are you going to put your pipes?" I don't know.
Okay, so, all right.
You know, one thing also I wanted to mention earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt your talking. One other thought when it comes to downtown water, actually water across the town, and again, I assume everybody knows, but we don't have a pressurized fire hydrant system.
Mhm.
We have dry hydrants that depend on streams and ponds that dry up during these droughts. So our volunteer fire department largely depends on their one tanker and their good relations with surrounding towns, with the mutual aid and tankers coming from other towns. So the lack of pressurized water downtown, goes beyond drinking water.
Yeah. And if we did get the water, it was in my mind's eye, and probably other people too, is that Morse Road test well, if that was the well we were going to use or a well field, is it then just go up the hill towards the school and the top of Pine Hill, is to have a tower up there. And then that would press, to the whole downtown. It would be, I think, I looked at the heights there, and I think that if you had a tower up there, you could still get water up to the top of, town hall from that area. And if we went in that direction,
Yeah, that's interesting. The library just did a big expansion, and in order to do that, they had to put in a fire suppression system, which involves big tanks and big pumps and a generator set. And I think that sent us back $500,000.
Yeah.
All of the new development in town has large 2,000-gallon cisterns. The library, 59 North Main has it. I think the houses down at Whitney Street, Millstone. I think there's
Yeah.
all of the multifamily developments have these large tanks too,
Yeah.
which will be exhausted in like 10 or 20 minutes, and it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
serious fire.
Okay. Well, as far as the goals, then we've thrown some out here. So if the other members, or anyone else who wants to send me things they would like to see us work on in our next meeting, you can send them to me to try and set up another agenda. Could people take a look at perhaps in January on a date when they could meet, a date and time for our next meeting?
Before I guess I probably should have said, I'm just thinking about this because I was typing. I think maybe for Taylor can agree or disagree, but at least for me, I've heard some of this thanks to people, giving me instruction, but I think if it is possible to have it as a goal for new members, just to learn up on maybe like the top 3 of these, re-look through the documents about
Right.
the town center, pressurized water supply, the issues, I guess. And it even could be that our goal is to report to you what at least I have learned, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong within the next month. But what's been done with getting the water supply to the center of town? What are the different, guess, a different points of view about a downtown water sewer district, cost benefit that's known. And then, a summary of an understanding of, and this may not be something to discuss yet, or maybe have town council show up or something, but our understanding of what is going to go on with the North Sherborn Water District. I don't know if those are reasonable goals, just to take a month to get up to speed and explain at least where I have gotten by next month, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. I don't know, does that make sense? Or is that something to be done outside of this meeting?
No, I mean,
Meredith, I completely agree. Like for me, I was sort of thinking, well, this isn't a goal for the group, but for me personally, I need to reread all of those documents. So I read them once, but it obviously didn't sink in on the first go. So I definitely need to do that, and then kind of get a sense of like where the gaps are in my mind and ask pointed questions about those, because they're probably not gaps. I'm sure Roger and Frank and Tara looked into them, and it just maybe it wasn't in one of the files. So
since it's a quorum,
yeah, but I'm with you. I need to do that.
Yeah, since it's a quorum when any two of us talk, I mean, it would have to happen, I think, in a Zoom session to keep everything legit.
but I think that one thing we could do is if we found a source of information, we could send that source to the person, not promoting
Okay.
it or whatever. Like just say, here's a site where they discuss this or discuss that. Because
Okay.
you seem to have done quite a bit of research, and we could probably benefit from some of the sites you've been to.
If you all had to prioritize for us to do our homework, what are the 3 top things that we should try to learn between now and the next meeting, if that's a reasonable proposal?
I think for me, the number one would be the North Sherborn Water District, because that's coming fast at us. As soon as the governor signs it, people are going to say, who do you recommend? What do you want to do? So I think we should learn as much about that as we can. And I think it'd be nice having these meetings that Marianne Nutro sits in on with Framingham. I think it'd be nice if one of us could sit in on one of those meetings. I don't really know what they're discussing or parsing or describing. So I think that might be a good idea too,
I think with Taylor and my growing work schedule, it may be that we have to use Marion's, reporting back.
Yeah.
To evaluate. But she's meeting with them with what frequency, just so I know?
I don't know. I mean, what the frequency is or what the protocol is, because
my guess is not high frequency. Every 2 or 3 months, maybe. I'm just guessing, but that's my sense.
And of course, that could be pushed up once the bill gets signed. And then, of course, I don't think that the Toll Brothers have really signed off on everything, and they're still looking at it, aren't they? They aren't ready to run, are they?
The last I heard, it's unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, of course, we have that third piece where Bob Murchison wants to have a piece right in the middle.
I think all of this, we just need to become well educated on the topic. And so that can be something like the history of the timeline, what the implications are.
Yeah.
And what would be number 2, would you say?
Well, just to familiarize ourselves with the downtown needs, I think.
Okay. Downtown needs for both pressurized water or any sort of public waters. Well, pressurized water sounds like it's separate from public water. Is that true, Tom?
Well, another thought, invite the fire chief. I don't know how, I don't know how serious a problem it is or isn't, but I've lived here 28 years. I've always been concerned that
your house would burn down. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have a fire hydrant next to a pond 800 feet from my house. you know, I'm lucky, I got that pond, but
You
do
do.
all of you
Is
have
there
a
water in
pond?
it now?
Yes, there is. But
Well, in theory, there's a pipe within reach of every house so that the insurance rate in Sherborn is uniform across town because we supposedly have firefighting capability.
So the
Yeah.
downtown needs would be number 2, and that would include pressurized and or public water supply
Yeah.
and a public sewer of some sort, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there a number 3 that compares to those?
Well, you
Well,
might look
further
at,
down would be the possible restrictions we talked about
Yeah.
too.
Okay, and that might go over into groundwater protection committee.
yeah,
and-
we'll
Yeah.
definitely be looking at that regardless.
Okay.
there's in a way, the biggest new wrinkle is PFAS and this whole concern about water quality for everybody in town. So there's probably going to be some program project to support homeowners with systems that
Homeowners, unfortunately, Roger, are on their own.
they are now, of course.
Yeah, and I don't see that changing. I've suggested the Board of Health do more.
Well, no,
They-
that's the state's going to do it
The state,
with federal money. I bet you it happens.
I mean, the thing is right now, aside from what comes out of our body, every time we wash a waterproof jacket, that was sprayed with PFAS and it goes down the drain,
Right.
you know, or anything you wash that,
you
it says
wax
it's
your,
water repellent, then you know it's got
You wa-
PFAS in it.
you wax your floor, you wax your skis, anything. Yep.
Well, I guess broader, we might somehow become more interested in the whole water quality issue for everybody in town with, obviously, with the groundwater protection committee people, but there may be some legal issue we want to take on there.
In Hopkinton, where they have PFAS in their public water supply, I think they give everyone who water tests over a certain amount, they give them either a certain amount off on their water bill or so many cases of water a month or something like that. And most of them, I think, have that reverse osmosis thing in the cellar, and they have my daughter lives in Hopkins, and they have like one faucet that goes through this reverse osmosis,
Yeah.
and
all
that's
you
what they
need.
use for the drinking water.
Yeah,
Frank,
that's what- yeah.
I'm confused. Is that public water or private water?
It's public water.
Public water, they can't be supplying it if it's out of compliance.
Well,
They have
nevertheless,
they have to give them bottled water, as is, the case for the library and the community center.
yeah, they are giving them either they're giving them bottled water or they're giving them, 20, 30, $40 off a month so they can go buy their water or whatever.
Well, you mentioned reverse osmosis. You can't use reverse osmosis if you have a septic system because you're just putting the PFAS back in the ground. It's against the law in Sherborn.
Okay. All right. Well, all right, so I think we have 3 general areas to think about for goals for probably self-study for next time to go back and share. And if anybody thinks of anything they want on the agenda specifically, then they can let me know if I'm going to make up the agenda and post it. Could you look at your calendars for January and see what might be a date that works for you? Right now I'm looking like January 13th to 17th, or do you want it the next week, the 21st to the 24th or something like that?
I will let Taylor speak first. What were you hoping
Yeah,
for?
I was thinking the week of the 13th to the 17th. You know, I could do, let's see, Tuesday the 14th or Wednesday the 15th at 8 p.m. Would that work for anybody else?
I
Okay,
should,
right now, 8 p.m. works for me.
Can I mention something about Wednesday, the 15th?
Sure.
There's a ZBA meeting at 7 o'clock on 41 North Main.
Oh,
then maybe the 14th.
okay. Let me see here.
And that's something your committee might start looking at is the downtown development, 41 North Main.
Yeah. Okay, so 8 p.m. on Tuesday, January 14th. Taylor, does that look all right for you, or?
It does. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, then why don't we set that as our tentative next one? And once again, if you forward to me any agenda items, or we can also forward to each other things that say, why don't you read this, or whatever it happens to be.
Without comment back or without, yes.
Right.
All right.
Any Anything else anyone wants to say for this evening?
Real quick on the 41 North Main, Tom, what is that? I haven't heard of that. What's there now and what's planned to go in?
Plan to go in is a 40B, what is it, 28 townhouses, 56 bedrooms, a 6,000 or 7,000 gallon septic system right next to the fireside, the border at the border of the two properties. And there'll be a new, if this were to happen, they'll need a new intersection where that light is, because that'll be the entrance and exit. And they may need to have a raised septic system, which means the entrance road would be on top of a raised septic system. There's all kinds of complications with, if you go to the town website, under land development, you can find all the site plans and things.
Wow, I was not aware of that one. That sounds big.
Is that one, Bob, or is that the other
No.
group?
That's the
That,
Yeah, they're,
that's Mr. Lebarsky.
Barsky. Okay,
Marcy, yeah.
right. Okay. All right. So, and everyone might want to tune in to the on the 17th, the planning board's going to have a hearing on the MBTA zoning.
Oh, that's a very important
Yeah.
thing to mention. Yes.
Yeah. And so it
Next week.
yeah, looks like it's segregated way up there next to Framingham and Natick, but the logical reason is supposed to be near an MBTA station, and that's about as close as you can get to the Framingham and the Natick MBTA station.
and
So-
it would be within the North Sherborn Water District as well.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, it would go by. I don't know if they figured that into the gallonage. That's the thing is,
They didn't.
they did not.
They
No.
did not.
Yeah, well, if they did not, then what they promised us, we almost used up. And so by the time you let them have water, you let Meadowbrook Road have water, and everyone else in between that's hook up and have water. I wonder if we might be reaching the limit of what they're going to give us.
Those are all very good questions, and there's no limit yet because there's no
Yeah.
final agreement with either Framingham or Natick. So those are very good questions. It's all up in the air at this point.
But we were very lucky with that. They changed the law because originally we were going to have almost 700 units in Sherborn,
Mm.
which, if it was one project, they could outvote the rest of the town. I mean, so then it made the adjacent town. So now we only have to have 78 units, which I think is much more palatable and reasonable for a town this size. But can you imagine 700 units? added
And
to the
it-
1,500 we have?
This is
And-
in the MBTA zone.
MBTA, and I think most of you probably know this, but just in case somebody doesn't, the way that law is written, as a town, you need to zone for this, but you don't need to, A, encourage the final construction, and B, you can make it near impossible like other towns have done. They've put zoning districts on top of existing apartment complexes, and for us, the original idea was they were gonna put it downtown where we have this water and septic disaster, and nobody could build downtown. So it's a really strange a law, the MBTA.
Yeah. Yeah, it could actually
communities.
work where they have it now. I mean, because if we got Framingham and Natick water and sewer there,
Yeah,
then it could work.
it could. You're right about that.
But it just seems like a sort of segregated community, though, stuck way up there in the corner. But it's not affordable, so there should be a full range of incomes in there.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's got no connection to housing affordability. Yeah.
Right. Okay, then. So we got our next meeting set. If anyone has a problem before then, let me know and we can, agree. We can talk about adjusting agendas or meeting times. We can collude on that.
We'll try to get the minutes up, and I guess do I send it to people to review? Is that the normal procedure for the minutes?
Yes, and then we make any corrections and then we get back to you and then you can
Okay.
send it off to Jackie, I guess it is.
Well, you
Okay.
have to approve them at your next meeting
Yeah.
before
And-
you send them to
Oh,
Jackie.
that's right. Excuse me. You're right. Yeah.
Okay, okay. All right, it might not be immediate. I'll probably ask for the recording because when I was trying to focus, but anyways, I'll get that done.
Okay.
All right.
If there's nothing else, does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
You just need a second. I heard a second.
Okay, second, and all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all so
Okay.